To begin this morning, the legal battle between the Trump administration and Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University graduate student and pro-Palestinian activist it intends to deport. A few days ago, Aaron Moriarty talked with his wife, who's expecting the couple's first child next month.
You know, my husband was taken away from me in the middle of the night. It was one of the most terrifying times of my life. I don't think I've ever experienced anything scarier than that.
Noor Abdalla, a 28-year-old dentist born and raised in Michigan, has suddenly found herself in the center of a storm she never saw coming. She and her husband, 30-year-old Mahmoud Khalil, had been living in Columbia University housing while he completed his master's degree, and they awaited the birth of their first child.
I was so excited, like we were setting everything up for like the nursery and his clothes, and Mahmoud was so excited too. Like,
turn around.
Okay, let's not. Okay.
That all changed on the evening of March 8th when federal agents arrived at their door.
And he was like, "Are you Mahmoud Khalil?" Mahmoud said yes, and the man said, "We're with the police, you have to come with us."
What's going through your mind at that point?
I was scared. I was terrified. Yeah, they just like handcuffed him and took him. I don't know what to do.
Abdalla used her phone to document what happened next.
At this point, Mahmoud was like, "Go take the keys, grab my green card." He thought maybe like if he shows the green card, you know, we'll be fine.
Did you think that if you showed the fact that your husband was a legal resident with a green card, that he'd be okay?
Mm-hmm. Because I was like, this is just a misunderstanding. They're going to take him away. They're going to take him to 26 Federal Plaza, see that he has a green card. He'll be home in a few hours. Excuse me. They're not talking to me. I don't know. Excuse me, the lawyer would like to speak to somebody. Oh my God, they're literally running away from me.
She has not seen her husband since. Khalil, who has been in an immigration detention center in Louisiana for 2 weeks, is one of many international students that the Trump administration says it plans to deport for their alleged actions in student protests. At Columbia University in New York, demonstrations against the war, while mostly peaceful, also led to the occupation and vandalizing of buildings. Free Palestine! And what many Jewish students described as a threatening anti-Semitic atmosphere on campus.
We know now that there are students in our class that simply hate us because we're Jewish.
Noor Abdalla says her husband...
I fucking hate this narrative so much, dude. The American government is so unimaginably dumb, and the media is so fucking stupid that, like, the hysterics of students on campus, like the hysterical perspective of a pro-Israel Jewish student on Columbia campus is more important than the First Amendment. It's more important than being able to say, hey, don't do a genocide, please. Don't associate with a country that is doing a genocide. It is like, it's hysteria. There's nothing to it other than hysteria. Like, these student-led protests are also led by Jewish students. Like, what are you talking about? When have conservative students not talked about how fearful they are on college campuses, man? They always talked about it. They're like, oh, libtards run the campuses. We hate it. They always want to have safe spaces and shit. Okay.
Khalil, a Palestinian born in Syria, became the lead negotiator between protesters and the university.
This encampment is a minor inconvenience compared to the generational shaping events taking place now in Gaza.
People really trusted him to be good in that role because he's so calm and good under pressure.
The president wants the...
But in the days following Khalil's arrest, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt painted a quite different picture.
This is an individual who organized group protests that not only disrupted college campus classes and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe on their own college campus, but also distributed pro-Hamas propaganda.
You also know that the press secretary said that your husband circulated pro-Hamas flyers. Did he?
That's not true.
Is Mahmoud pro-Hamas?
These are accusations that the Trump administration keeps pushing on him.
But what do you say to those?
I think it's ridiculous. It's disgusting that's what they're resorting to, that's the tactic that they're using to make him look like this person that he's not. Literally, it's so simple. He just does not want his people to be murdered and killed. He doesn't want to see little kids' limbs being blown off, you know?
The university led us to this situation, unfortunately, through bringing the police here.
Mahmoud Khalil has not been formally charged with any crimes, and the government has showed no evidence he provided material support to terrorist groups. Instead, Khalil's been arrested and detained under the Immigration Act that allows the Secretary of State to deport any person whose presence or activities would, quote, have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S.
If you are in this country to promote Hamas, to promote terrorist organizations, to participate in vandalism, to participate in acts of rebellion and riots on campus, we never would have let you in if we had known that. If you violate the terms of your visitation, you are going to leave.
In fact, Khalil was never charged with vandalism on campus. CBS News asked the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security for comment. We did not receive a response. This is incredibly rare, what happened to Khalil, isn't it?
There are many things about this that I think are sort of without precedent or with very little precedent. I was really shocked.
Lindsay Nash, an associate professor at Cardozo School of Law in Manhattan, teaches and practices immigration law.
They haven't said that he's committed a crime that makes him deportable. They haven't said he's committed any kind of crime at all.
What's more, says Nash, the provision that the government relies on was once determined to be too vague and unconstitutional. The federal judge who made that ruling, Judge Mary Ann Barry, President Trump's sister, who died in 2023. Her decision was ultimately overturned on procedural grounds. So this particular provision that Secretary of State Rubio is leaning on is really untested.
I think it is. I think we'll have to see in court.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's crazy. As a Jew, personally, I'm worried that they're stifling free speech in the name of anti-Semitism, and people will see that and start resenting Jewish people, and then actual anti-Semitism will start happening. Yeah, it's already happening. Dude, all of this conflation between Israel and Judaism is teaching people that all this baby murder is something that Jews love, and that the American government will take any action against people who dare criticize this baby murder to protect the Jewish people in this country. They keep conflating it. It's a dangerous conflation. It's a false conflation. And yes, it is already creating a shit ton of anti-Semitism in this country. And just like the only pro-labor sentiment on mainstream news was coming from the likes of Tucker Carlson, who is a WASP nationalist, if the only permissible and popular anti-Israel statements are coming from right-wingers, many of which who are anti-Semitic, like openly, and if that's the only game in town, people are going to say, I'm anti-Israel because I'm anti-Semitic. The Candace Owenses and the Fresh and Fits and the Sneakos and the Dan Bilzerians of the world, and even the Tucker Carlsons of the world, are the most visible anti-Israel advocates in this country right now. Collectively, they are presented as the sea of anti-Israel sentiment. And liberals, on the other hand, are focusing their efforts on people like myself, people like Mahmoud Khalil, or refusing to defend people like Mahmoud Khalil. I'd argue you're up there with what? You'd argue that I'm up there with like anti-Semitic statements, or you'd argue that I'm up there in terms of like being a visible anti-Zionist in this country. I am up there, but my reach, my popularity, no, I understand what you meant. You meant like in terms of popularity. My reach and popularity is nothing. It pales in comparison to Candace Owens. Candace Owens every single day covers another anti-Semitic conspiracy on her broadcast. Like, I see it. I see the clips on my Twitter timeline because Twitter is just dominated by Nazis. Every other day there's a new thing where she's like, yep, it's the Jews again doing Jewish shit. That is the extent of her commentary. It is reactionary, and it is an incredibly easy to understand message. And it's a message that goes along with what Jake Tapper is saying too. Because remember, dual loyalty being an anti-Semitic trope is true, and yet pro-Israel people constantly invoke the dual loyalty trope, but in a woke manner. So if the right-wingers are saying dual loyalty in a wokely manner as well, by the way, right-wingers who are pro-Israel are saying all Jews love Israel. This is like, shut the fuck up. You can't say anything about it. And liberals are saying dual loyalty in the exact same way. And then the anti-Semitic people are saying dual loyalty. Then the overwhelming media narrative on this issue is dual loyalty. Jews love Israel. Jews love the baby murder. It's their favorite fucking thing. That is literally what we are teaching this next generation. A generation that for the first time ever, perhaps, has actually recognized that what Israel's doing is wrong. Now, you either address that by going, yeah, what Israel's doing is wrong, but it has nothing to do with Judaism, or you think that you can defend Israel's actions with the old school method of trying to suppress any sort of criticism against Israel. And if you've done this for 70 years, if you've been able to successfully defend Israel for 70 plus years by saying, oh, dude, you're anti-Semitic, shut the fuck up. Why are you being anti-Semitic? What are you, a Nazi? Shut the fuck up. If you have been able to successfully do that for the past 70 years, but you can't do that anymore, but you're still trying to use that, all you're going to do is educate people on the false notion that Israel is for the Jews, by the Jews, and every Jew loves Israel, and they care about Israel more than anything else. Very dangerous prospect here. That's where we're at. That is straight up where we're at. Bro, Gen Z is crazy. The media does call all of Gen Z anti-Semites, even though not all of us are. It's bad because there are Gen Z that fall for anti-Semitic conspiracy, but muddying the waters is so bad. I know. And you know what's crazy, though? There is a shit ton of anti-Semitic Gen Zers out there. I'm sorry. This is just the truth. I mean, I see it. I see that shit nonstop. Americans are not very intelligent. They literally think like if you call COVID the Wuhan flu, that's somehow magically going to solve the problem, right? Like it's the same shit. They think, oh, if we are anti-Semitic, then, maybe we'll be able to solve the problem. We're doing activism by being anti-Semitic. I'll give you some common metas that even I didn't know. I think one number is 271, the new dog whistles. 271 is the claim that only 271,000 Jews were killed in the Holocaust. It's a Holocaust revisionist conspiracy. That's one. Another one is my family, her family or his family was promised this 5,000 years ago. Now that in and of itself is not inherently anti-Semitic. That's just like a joke about how the false conflation of Israel with Judaism has been brought about. Why the fuck are there more dog whistles? Dude, Gen Z has different dog whistles than the generations prior. That's what I'm saying. They'll say, oh, 5,000 years ago, this person was promised this. It's not inherently a anti-Semitic statement, but it is applied towards all Jews in an anti-Semitic way sometimes, even though that joke is inherently about like the lie that the Israeli government tells about how, this is the promised land for Jews. It has to be Jewish controlled. Israel is the promised land. I think the average Jewish person who supports Israel calling everyone who even mentions the conflict in a light that doesn't positively reflect Israel a Jew hater could be why Gen Z is like that. I don't agree and can look at someone who says that to me and think they're just misinformed and brainwashed. But the kids just invented a new dog whistle on the spot. I think it's the first generation where you're really seeing the backlash with. Yes, I know. I agree. That is literally what I'm saying. That's my point. If you think that constantly conflating Israel with Judaism and thinking that that is a defense mechanism to stop conversation entirely from taking place by saying, oh, you're being anti-Semitic, you must hate Jews. If you hate Israel, you hate Jews. When you say that, people are going to be like, okay, I do hate Israel. I guess I hate Jews. That's how it works. And in the short term, this kind of anti-Semitism actually benefits Israel's project anyway. Not dissimilar to the bombing campaigns that the Mossad did in Iraq, blowing up synagogues in Iraq with the hopes of forcing the Jews in Iraq to escape to Israel. They did that shit because they wanted Jews to feel less safe in other countries so that they would have to go to Israel because Israel has to constantly grow. Israel must be a Jewish ethno-state. But I think the craziest shit is when the Trump administration says like, shalom, Mahmoud. The Trump administration, the right-wing government is saying, shalom, Mahmoud. This is why, I can't stop thinking about that. I can't stop thinking about how insane it is that the American government's official accounts said, shalom, Mahmoud, after ripping away Mahmoud Khalil in the dead of the night away from his American citizen wife who's 8 months pregnant for the crime of speaking out against Israel's genocide. Yeah, it's like, dude, this is literally, It's the White House Zog posting on Maine. Exactly. Like, this is everything Nazis have been saying. And Zog is Zionist occupied government. It's a 4chan Nazi term. This is the type of shit that David Duke would never have dreamed would be happening in broad daylight. You know what I mean? This is the type of shit that like Nicholas Fuentes and David Dukes of the world have been saying is going on. And the American government is like posting about it. I mean, yeah, it's way older than 4chan. Fair.
Courts will have a lot to consider.
Yesterday we had a very long session with the university negotiators.
So who is Mahmoud Khalil? Insider or conciliator? Legal experts say this case is about a lot more than a single man.
The idea that Mahmoud Khalil, one grad student at Columbia, is imperiling the foreign policy of the United States is absurd.
Connor Fitzpatrick is a senior attorney with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, or FIRE. He believes the true reason that Khalil and other students are being targeted is because of their polarizing viewpoints.
Freedom of expression is hard. It requires listening to, tolerating, and even defending views that you or I might find completely repugnant, that make our blood boil. But the alternative is so much more dangerous.
The students were violently attacked by public safety without any warnings.
But Khalil is the face of campus protests. He's been accused of helping to create an environment of anti-Semitism. I think to a lot of Americans, why shouldn't he be deported?
So the First Amendment and principles of free speech are designed to protect.
I don't think this attitude is as popular as this fucking dumbass is presenting it as.
Protect the unpopular speakers. There is no such thing as an un-American viewpoint in the eyes of the First Amendment. Sure, if the administration could come forth with new evidence that they haven't provided so far, showing that Mr. Khalil engaged in vandalism or engaged in conduct that would rise to the level of harassment, we would be having a very, very different conversation.
If the government establishes that he is a leader or a representative of a terrorist organization or advances or espouses their cause, that is grounds for stripping him of his green card and removing him.
Ilya Shapiro is director of constitutional studies at the Manhattan Institute.
Oh my God. Dude, the Manhattan Institute is where Christopher Rufo's from, by the way. Jewish consultant wearing a release the hostages pin at the neo-Nazi Manhattan Institute think tank saying, yeah, you should be deported if you hurt the feelings of Israel is psychotic. This is why I always say, I think a lot of American Zionists who are Jewish themselves or American Zionists who aren't anti-Semitic themselves, who, you know, care about the safety of Jews in this country, do not understand what they are advocating for and how badly this will explode in their faces. You are making some scary allegiances, dude. This allegiance will be short-lived.
Institute, a conservative think tank. Shapiro, who has called for a crackdown on pro-Palestinian.
Yeah, I'm going to watch the in-campus official trailer. I asked if I could see the whole thing. I can't watch the whole thing yet, but it's going to be released, and I will be watching it. Also, I want to say my bad to Macklemore. I know I've made a lot of jokes about Macklemore, but honestly, he's awesome. He's been funding a whole bunch of these documentaries and things like that. I mean, he's great. Macklemore is awesome. I'm sorry I said he was corny in the past. I'm here to right those wrongs. He's the man. He's dope.
And protesters says this case is not about speech, but what he says are illegal actions.
Nobody is being prosecuted for their speech. It's not that American citizens can speak freely, but non-citizens can't. That's not the issue. But with these immigration regulations, if you are a supporter of, if you're organizing together with others to conspiring to do certain things, those are actions. And it's those actions that put you askance of the immigration law.
If he wasn't charged with those crimes at that time, and he hasn't been accused of them now, should he be deported simply because people think he did it?
You don't have to be charged, let alone convicted of a crime, to be deported.
Federal court and immigration judges will have the final word. While the case plays out in court, Khalil's attorneys have asked for bail. Noor Abdalla fears he'll miss the birth of their first child. Meanwhile, a Rasmussen poll released this past Thursday finds 45% of likely U.S. voters believe he should be deported.
I know, I'm sorry. There.
Okay.
His wife, a U.S. citizen, has now taken on a role she never wanted, answering questions she feels are often unfair.
The broad, popular, generational momentum against Israel cannot be led by anti-Semites. Because if it is, then everybody's. Is repression of Jews common in fascist nations, or was that a Hitler-Nazi thing? Dog, repression of Jews has more historical basis than nation states. Repression of Jews existed before nations did. Angloids love repressing Jews and doing pogroms to Jews and blaming everything on the Jews. It's their favorite activity. It's the most European thing you can do. It's the most white supremacist thing you can do. It was a favored pastime. Kind of funny because in Kingdom Come, there's also a little bit of that as well, because there's the Jewish quarters in Gutenberg, and the Jews that escaped, they are also in favor of King Wenceslas, because there was a pogrom that happened in Prague when the usurper king took over, and that they had to escape to Gutenberg. Yeah, Europeans love shitting on the Romani people, and they love shitting on the Jews historically.
Trying to change public perception.
It gets offensive when you're constantly having to say, I'm not this, I'm not this. It kind of brought back a lot of things that I experienced growing up in the United States. In New York the other day, me and my husband were walking, and someone said, called me a terrorist. So it's like constantly throughout my whole life, and I think most Muslims in this country can relate to that. It doesn't matter what I say, that's what they think of me, and that's what they're gonna think of me.
I'm not gonna do the Israel settlers video, but here, let's watch the encampment's official trailer. And then we'll move to some more fun shit.
We're here to discuss the little Gazas that have risen up on campuses across America.
There is a movement to radicalize young people.
Can you believe they are chanting about the Intifada in New York City?
I really believe they are brainwashed.
Intifada.
There was a very concerted effort by the media to portray things a certain way and refuse to discuss Gaza. Colombia is materially invested in the genocide in Gaza. We don't want our money to go towards Palestinian death.
I was born and raised in a Palestinian refugee camp. The university was cracking down on Palestinian activism on campus.
It's completely farcical to imply that in any way, Jewish people were being persecuted.
I have never felt more proud to be Jewish than when I was pushing our university to divest from genocide.
They would just criminalize anyone who would participate in a protest. That was the moment where students were like, we need to do something more.
The people they won't leave, but it's threatening about divesting and wanting peace.
The university would say oh, you're overestimating your power. I remember telling them there are 60 universities setting up encampments across the United States.
By the way, they use Marxism's footage from the encampments. They didn't ask me, but I guess we didn't have good enough footage.
We got Yale holding it down right now on live. What you willing to risk? What you willing to give? What if you were in Gaza? What if those were your kids?
In '68, the students at Columbia took over the campus, mainly in protest of the war in Vietnam. Columbia talks about how it was okay then, but not okay now.
Bravery is very contagious. We kind of watched Columbia in awe, and we knew we were next.
The only weapon they have is fear, and we call their bluff. They have nothing!
It's sick. Macklemore played a role in producing this, by the way. No, the song is no longer corny. It's actually sick. It's actually dope.